Well, subject to confirmation by the Senate, the man who will oversee Nigeria's next crucial presidential election in 2027, Professor Joash Ojo Amupitan, is getting his feet in the stirrups and preparing to settle into the saddle as the new chairman of the Electoral Commission, INEC. He's a respected academic, lawyer, and senior advocate of Nigeria, and he's from Kogi State in the North Central region, the first person from that zone to be nominated to head the Electoral Commission. President Tinubu described him as apolitical and perhaps more instructively. His appointment has been welcomed by the opposition obedient movement, who say they are hopeful that his tenure will mark a significant milestone in this country's electoral history. And for more on the new INEC chairman, I am joined by Samson Itodo, who is the executive director of YIAGA Africa, as well as Nwagwu, who is a public accountability and democratic reforms advocate. Thank you, gentlemen, for being on Newsnight.
Thanks for having us.
We appreciate your time. Let me begin with you, Mr. Nwagwu. We now have a new nominee to head the electoral body, INEC. What's your reaction to his emergence as the nominee, Professor Amupitan?
Oh, well, honestly, my sense is that the president has nominated, and following the process that exists already, which is that that nominee has to probably be profiled first by the secret police and then eventually to the Council of States. And the Council of States should ordinarily do the due diligence, even if their responsibility is advisory. But I think that these oversight mechanisms needs to be a bit more transparent. I'm worried that all we get to hear is unanimous, that the Council of State has unanimously. It would have been better if we are able to say whether they voted or whether there are, clear issues. And now we are going to a more serious place where we expect more serious work. I expect that the treadmill of oversight should kick in very seriously. The Senate has a committee on intelligence, it has committee on electoral matters, it has committee on fraud and such other issues. These committees should be able to not do the yes thing. They should be able to also, engage this nominee and find out whether he's suitable or not suitable to. And also from some of us in the civil society, we should be able to also not pander to this good man thesis that is being put out right now, is to be able to dig much more deeper and find out affiliations, relationships that can eventually put the man in good stead or also put him in a way that much more, if you like, much more interest in his nomination could become. But I like somebody said earlier today, I don't think he's been cleared. We should, of course, we should not give the impression that
he's been cleared. He still has a hurdle of confirmation by the Nigerian Senate to go through. Samson Itodo, not much is known about this man outside of the courtroom. A lot of people have seen him as a litigation lawyer, a senior advocate of Nigeria. Does appointing somebody with little or no experience with election management, does it worry you? Is that a concern for you and your reaction to his emergence?
I think that when you look at his pedigree, whether it's his academic accomplishments, they are unimpeachable. He has, all the professional qualifications based on what we have been told, and also as someone who I also know as well, as someone who was my teacher in the university. Yes, he's got his accomplishments, he's got this pedigree, but when you look at INEC as an institution, you require more than that. You require individuals, who have the courage to withstand political pressure. You talk about experience. He's been an election litigation expert. Now, once you manage election litigation, you have a certain level of understanding about how election, works, even though it doesn't mean you understand election administration. But at the end of the day, if he is cleared by the Senate, the team that he works with is critical. But INEC isn't just about an individual. Because yes, he's the chief returning officer. There are resident electoral commissioners. There are electoral officers. There are a range of people who are involved in election administration. So yes, he's one individual, but you've got an institution that has a mixed bag of different individuals. Some, have character, some don't. And so what you're going to have to deal with is how do you manage these people to deliver credible elections. So I think to a large extent, he's got his work cut out for him. He doesn't have sufficient time if he is confirmed. You have the Anambra elections, you have the FCT elections, you have 2 governorship elections next year. But even more importantly, by February, the timetable for the 2027 elections needs to be out. So there's little or no time. This is why, this entire transition process needs to come to a close as soon as possible.
Mr. Nwagwu, do you agree that transition of leadership in such an organization needs enough time for preparedness? Is that a concern for you? And when Mr. Itodo speaks about the institution beyond one man, INEC faces serious credibility challenges at the moment. We know about the logistical lapses, technology failures, and public trust deficit. What should Professor Amupitan be prioritizing should he be confirmed by the Nigerian Senate?
I think we will have to wait for him to cross the hurdle of nominations. Of appointments, and then. But
we can't set an agenda for him, can't we?
No, we will wait for him. We can set an agenda, and if he's not cleared, then we come back and reset agenda.
Okay.
So we would have to not precede the Senate. We should be able to wait that out. But more importantly for me, like Sam said, would be to create a situation in which we are placing demands, and those demands have to be clear demands about what he needs to do if he's cleared and what needs to happen. INEC, if you come into INEC has a pool of almost everybody in there, up to the clerk, represents an interest that sometimes are even extraneous. So managing those interests is also very, very key. In terms of public trust, that's another debate. Credibility issues, those are very clear debate issues. But I think that for now, what needs to happen is to be able to ensure that we have an INEC chairman that understands the challenge that is coming to face, especially when this appointment is coming very close to these elections. There are no learning curves in INEC. You cannot use Nigerians are so much in a hurry for you to use any election as a learning curve. But again, whether he's had experience in INEC or not, I don't know. I can't remember any INEC chairman that came from within INEC. Even though we would have loved for someone who has, insider experience. But if that doesn't happen, the antecedents of former INEC chairmen is also that they came from outside. But Sam alluded to that fact. The team, it must be a clear team. The team, the quality of people around him. That's why they say the African king looks like he's very wise. Is the wisdom of other people that he gathers together and then begins to shine out. So I think that what needs to happen is that part of the reforms, internal reforms within INEC, need to be holistic, in terms of the quality of people who will also come as resident electoral commissioners. These off-cycle elections you talk about, those elections are as good as the resident electoral commissioners in those states. If you have a not too, competent rec, it smears on even the national chairman. And there's nothing, the national chairman cannot relocate to a state to go and conduct election. He can only oversee. So the quality of the resident electoral commissioners that he's going to be working with, and the statistics is coming out again that very soon there will be a lot of replacement for resident electoral commissioners.
Yes.
So the quality of people, non-partisan people, people who have credibility, people who have courage, people who can stand up. And then more importantly is to also warn politicians. You see, these people will come with all the pedigree, with all the qualification, with all the competencies. But if the environment is fouled, in the way that our political class defecate in the public well, shamelessly, then we are not going to have the kind of outcomes that we're looking for.
Okay. Samson, Mr. Nwagwu is skeptical about setting an agenda because he says we have to wait not to put the cat before the horse and let him be screened first. But when you look at, you have worked with election management in Nigeria for a long time now. When you look at what he's coming to, should he be confirmed again, what he's coming into as the electoral body, what would be the priority for him, given those off-cycle elections you've mentioned, credibility, trust, confidence in the electoral process? What should he prioritize?
I think preceding that is the fact that the Senate needs to ensure that in the confirmation process, it is open, it is transparent, that it issues a public call for memoranda and petitions.
But do we have that time? You just spoke about time management.
No, I guess that by next week his name will be read on the floor, and they can give time for people, you know, and stakeholders to submit petitions, but make the process very open. But I think there are a couple of things that will befall any INEC chairman, whether it's Professor Amupitan or whoever. The first one is the question of the budget for the next elections. We are just currently in a scenarios retreat for the next election. And the next election is, the projected budget for the next election is about 840 billion naira. In 2023, it was 305 billion. So the next election will cost about 800 and something billion. You've got to start budgeting, and in fact,
that's more than double.
In fact, 65% of that money should be released to the commission, because in 6 months' time, INEC needs to start deploying non-sensitive materials across the federation for the 2027 election, because it's not far away. That's something he's got to contend with. The second point is the issue about INEC's guidelines, and that the inconsistent application of INEC guidelines needs to stop. Yes, he is a legal scholar. He understands election law very well. We're hoping if he is confirmed, he will bring that to bear in ensuring that there is regularity in the way INEC implements its guidelines. The question also about electronic transmission of results. But to do that, you need to subject the BVAS and the IRF back end to public scrutiny. This is what citizens have clamored for, because that way it will deepen the confidence of citizens. These are actions that a new INEC chairman can take that can inspire and boost public confidence, you know, as we build towards whether it's Anambra or future elections.
And how important is continuity? Because I recall that just recently in July, Professor Yakubu did release about 142 recommendations for reforms before leaving office. Some of them had to do with administrative reforms, some of them security, others, you know, were listed. What should Amupitan trash and what should he pick? Even though I know you're skeptical about, you know.
Well, first is to say that you have to define rules.
Yes.
When we are talking about funding, it is not Amupitan that gives himself funds. The politicians provide the funds. If they starve him of funds, they have already set him up for failure and frustration. So we need to be able to unpack these issues and say, look, if currently, from what we hear, the current INEC, the funding for the 2023 election, they have not even got all that was appropriated for 2023. Then what then guarantees that the 800 and something billion that we are talking, which should be appropriated in 2025, 2026 and 2027 to be able to, you know, guarantee the success of this. So the politicians have very big role to play. So if you want to talk about electronic transmission of results, you are going to be dealing with electronic collation, because the challenge is not transmission, the challenge is collating these results.
But we did have problems with transmission.
No, we had one problem with transmission.
Isn't that big enough for the 2023 presidential election?
No, because the politicians had their own results. They have the results in their pocket. So the back end and the rest of it is the responsibility of the National Assembly to now make clear, definitive laws about what this means. Upload of results or upload and transmission and collation of results. This clarity needs to be very clear. So the responsibility of the National Assembly. So even if Amupitan is excited about reforms, if the folks who have responsibility to legislate these reforms, you know, don't do what they have to do, we have to put the pressure there. And then finally, is that the administrative reforms are not difficult. Those ones are things that you can use guidelines to regularize. But again, the guys who are in the states, the implementers of these processes, can read these things upside down, whichever way they like. So it has to do with the quality, the character, the complexion, the nature of the resident electoral commissioners who will be working, and national commissioners. Because like he said, it's not a play of one man. Yeah. If they don't cooperate, then you can also have a situation in which the EMB is divided. And we saw that scenario, was it in where there was anticipation that even the EMB itself could could be thrown into crisis.
I heard you mention politicians about twice in your submission, but as we wrap up, and this is for both of you, Samson, Itodo, how can Professor Amupitan demonstrate true independence of that body early enough to win public trust? I mean, he's been nominated by the president. He will or should be confirmed by the Nigerian Senate. But so the independence of the Nigeria's electoral body, how can he demonstrate that? For both of you as we wrap up. First, Samson.
I think there are three ongoing actions. The first one is on the registration of political parties. 14 political associations are being considered for registration. How that process is managed in the enforcement of both the Constitution, the Electoral Act, and INEC regulations, ensuring that a level playing field is created for all, is one particular case. The second one relates to the Anambra election and subsequent elections. Who will be the returning officer? How the coalition officers are recruited? Those are also critical, because we hear stories of politicians submitting names to INEC officials for consideration. And the third, and perhaps the last one, is that when the commission issues its guidelines and its policies, that it does not pander to any political pressure, and that when it takes decisions, it communicates those decisions, you know, to citizens timelessly. That is the way you build confidence, you know, on the part of stakeholders. But once there is inconsistency in the application of your policies and your guidelines, you begin to create room for people to doubt whether the commission is acting on its own volition or is responding to external shocks or pressures from political actors.
Mr. Nwagwu.
Yeah, but I think that we should also be very cautious and nuanced about partisan conversations as disappointment is coming. There's also people who are already in the business of delegitimizing even the 2027 election before it starts. And the way to do that is to delegitimize the institutions that will organize these elections. INEC, for instance, will come under heavy attack from very partisan interests. The security agencies will come under heavy attack from, so that at the end of the day, if anything happens untoward, they will say, oh, you know, we told you people earlier. So we have to be nuanced about the attitude of our politicians who are very, very far removed from reforms. In the conversation for reforms, they don't come near it. And many times we give them comfort. And they are excited when we give them comfort and play, you know, with the soft guy. The INEC, we put them on the table, we x-ray them. But the guys who contribute 60% of all the challenges, 70% of the challenges we have in our electoral process are left to be smiling and looking at us and say, just continue. And then finally, if Amupitan is confirmed, if Professor Amupitan is confirmed, he has to extricate himself from the extraneous forces that made this appointment happen.
Okay, it does look like this. One important advice to the professor, if he's confirmed, is stay clear of the Nigerian politicians.
That's for me.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Executive Director of YIAGA Africa, Samson Itodo, and Nwagwu, Public Accountability and Democratic Reforms Advocate. We do appreciate your time and your submissions on the news tonight.